Good morning, good evening, ladies and gentlemen. My name is Gang Karume. I'm speaking from DRC. I am the consultant in charge of the DRC Hub development. I've been asked.
Hi there, sorry about that. I think we've lost Gang, who is our chair. Let me just jump in until he's here. So welcome everyone. This is What It Takes to Build a Hub. And it's the second session that we're running like this. So the first session yesterday, we spoke with DRC, Guatemala, and Pakistan. And today you'll hear from Akmal Ali from the Pacific. He works in Piango, which is the secretariat of the Pacific Hub. And you'll hear from Joseph. Joseph is one of the moderating team members of the India Humanitarian Hub. So welcome both of you. Maybe I'll just kick off the questions until Gang is here. So yeah, could you both maybe share just, help people understand what the hubs are. So if you can share in one sentence or two what your hub is about, what it's trying to do. Maybe we'll start with you, Akmal, and then Joseph.
Thank you very much, Tanya. Warm Pacific greetings to everyone who's out there watching and to all the START Network members, partners, stakeholders from all around the world. Nisam Bulavinaka, warm Pacific greetings to everybody. To your question, Tanya, what is the hub, or what does it take? So I will just say this. A hub is a collective, a collision of individuals and people who believe in the idea of locals having the sovereignty to be able to decide or determine local agenda by themselves. In this spirit, it doesn't mean that we disregard the expertise of outsiders and other partners. However, we see that the outsiders and other partners play a complementing role because humanitarian work cannot be done by one party or another. In this way, what we do is we acknowledge the knowledge of what has existed or what is existing, and at the same time, what is coming on the table. Therefore, both the sides trying to complement each other's work and successfully carrying out the humanitarian work whose main focus is, and let me remind everybody, whose main focus is people. Thank you.
Thanks so much, Akmal. And how does that translate in the Pacific? What does that look like?
In the Pacific, it's very simple. The people in the Pacific, people are the core, or well, basically people are the core to anything. Our communities, we live in communal societies. Therefore, we need to be able to live together, to work together, and to coexist. Therefore, in the context of the Pacific, Piango, who is a network of networks in the Pacific, having membership in 24 Pacific Island countries and territories, and indirectly, probably we have more than 2,000 NGOs and CSOs who are part of the Piango network, who are members of our 24 members in the Pacific Island countries and territories. With that network, what we have done is we have gone a step further and started engaging and working with those who are not part of the network, however, are doing humanitarian work. And that we've been able to, and the framework that we have been using is the Pacific Resilience Framework approved by the Pacific Island Forum leaders. Therefore, with that in mind, we've been able to come up with a little working group where there is not one, two, or there are 3 chairs, which rotates, and we plan to bring this out and form just one hub, which is the Pacific Hub. And from there, our mini hubs will be the national hubs, which is individual countries. And currently we plan to have one regional Pacific Hub, which is, of course, will be hosted at the Piango Secretariat, and until such time the members decide otherwise. But then again, we will also have national national hubs. And currently we have identified Tonga, Fiji, Solomon Islands, Vanuatu, and Samoa. And probably we will have a general hub where other countries will fall in. These 5 countries we have chosen because they are the more disaster-prone countries in the South Pacific. Thank you.
Thanks so much, Akmal. And so over to you, Joseph. Can you tell us a bit about the India Humanitarian Hub? Joseph, you're muted.
We believe that the local actors are most important. Any disaster per se impacts the local people, and who are the local actors and where are they? So they should be more involved, and the hub should give a supporting hand to them in strengthening their existing capacities and building linkages to various platforms. It could be to the government, it could be to the funding sources, or it could be to the technical teams. All these kind of things we are looking at and trying to build in a linkage and strengthen the local systems where the local actors are able to respond immediately with the power of decision taking on their side. We believe decisions should be taken by them, and unlike what is happening now, decisions coming from the other places doesn't document well. So within a short span of time, how do you build in a system is what that we are looking at. We ultimately are looking at a systems change where we feel innovation, localization, and alternate financial mechanism will build in a new system. So that's it.
Thanks so much, Joseph. I think Gang is back now. So if that's the case, I'll hand back the chairing to you as the rightful chair. Are you there, Gang? Gang,
Yes, yes, I am, Tanya.
Okay. All right, I'll hand back to you.
I'm sorry, guys, internet connection, what happened. Thanks for your answer, Joseph. Thanks for your answer, Akmal. The second question, then I'm going to start with Joseph because Akmal started. What have been actually the challenges that you've faced while navigating the hub setup? For yourself and your hub, what has been one of the moments you would say, yes, it has been worth establishing this hub? I'll start with the positive, then I'll come to the challenges later on. Let's start with the positive. Joseph?
The positive thing, if you're looking at, is everybody knows 2020 and 2021, we had COVID-19 lockdowns, etc. Amidst this, we just initiated our discussions and then this came up. So 2019, we had this discussions and coming up, and we are setting in a good pace. We also had frequent disasters coming up. If you look at this year itself, in India alone, there has been around 30 odd events, heavy rains or floods or cyclones or landslides. So it has been really tough, but if you're looking at a positivity, the lockdown one in COVID-19, when we were discussing with some people, we saw new emergence of approaches, new indigenous approaches coming up. Even in the lockdown one, we didn't find very much of a proactive engagement from the INGOs. The local agencies tried to mobilize their resources and try to build in a system. Because it was, a dicey situation where you can't go, people can't move out. The only access were the local agencies. So the local agencies were able to do extraordinary work. And even if you look still further, later on in India, we had amendments in a foreign currency regulation where the intermediary system is no more there in place. It was expected that this system would help local agencies to access resources from abroad. But unfortunately, what is happening in India is the international agencies, NGOs have become now implementing NGOs. So that is something which is blocked. That's a negative. But amidst this also we are looking at certain systems, but there are some, when I interact with some NGOs, now they say, even international NGOs and local NGOs now, but we can't accept that blindly because there are some other issues attached to that which deals with funding. That is that probably when Gang comes to the challenges, we'll have to talk about that. So these challenging situations also helps us to rework our context, re-understand and redefine our role. How do we position the hub? Perhaps if you would have. So there has been significant challenges for us because all of a sudden NGOs are also stressed with work, particularly the big NGOs have to implement directly. And if you're taking the small NGOs, they have to readjust. They are used to a system of getting fund and that is not there. So in this system, there are certain positivity coming out, but there are also a lot of challenges coming up. So we are looking now at how we position ourselves in the system, but understanding the importance more of local organization with local systems and local access.
Good, very, very good. You've been so good in mixing up small and big balls challenges, the positiveness of your presence of local actors. Akmal, what would you say?
Gang, I think my answer will be quite similar to that of to Joseph. I think in the last 1 year or from last year when COVID-19 has hit us, we have been hit by this atrocity that's humongous, that has not left anyone behind in its all true meaning. And while we were having that, Fiji was again hit by 2 Category 5 cyclones in December last year. This was Cyclone Harold and Cyclone Yasa. Now imagine you're already facing so much and then you're facing a Category 5 cyclone. What do you do? How do you respond? What are the readiness indicators? What do you coordinate? So the hub is basically an answer to be able to provide that support that is needed in an individual country, that when they require help is mobilized. And while Priyango has been engaged with START Network from November of 2019, and we are very privileged to be, part of the START Network now. But in 2016, when we had initiated the idea of this hub in 2016 after Cyclone Winston, when we realized that while we would have amongst us disaster tourists coming in straight after any cyclone, paying thousands of dollars in fares and trying to come in and trying to get more fund, and which doesn't really trickle down to the local actors, Priyango, with its member AFCOS, mobilized more than 66 NGOs who were providing humanitarian assistance, did a mapping, and provided a huge amount of support to the people of Fiji, which even the government of Fiji has acknowledged. And I think our work in a little way in the Pacific is kind of supported a little bit more by us being given that power by legislature as the coordination agencies for civil society or NGO organizations during humanitarian crisis. That gives us a lot of leeway. And in all of these countries, wherever there is a disaster regulation, it is Priyango members who are the lead agencies. So therefore, to be able to provide the support and vice versa, it's quite easy. And the wow moment, I think the wow moment would be when you realize that you know, the rest of the world, I think to me the wow moment was when we came together as 5 hubs, whether it was Guatemala, whether it was DRC, whether it's India, whether it's Pakistan. We realized that we humanitarian actors face the same problem and challenges everywhere. So that meant having solidarity. And today I'm glad to say that at least the 5 of us who are part of the START Network now have this solidarity, and we understand each other, and we have exchanged so much knowledge with each other and learn so much from each other.
Brilliant. That you and Joseph are saying that a new disaster is a good opportunity, it's an enabler actually to rethink through, redefine, redesign, learn from failures, grow from our successes. And that is brilliant to hear. It's also really interesting to hear that the hub, they all have meetings, the association, the contacts between hubs is also one way or the other another enabler, right? I would leave it to you and Joseph, whoever will feel the first to respond. Then what is another enabler that you think has been at play when mounting up your hub? You've already talked about a new disaster is an enabler. You've talked about the connection is an enabler. Is there any other you can think of for the moment? I'll leave it to whoever, Joseph, Wada, Akmal, go ahead first.
So you want to go first?
Well, you can go.
So in the Pacific here, I would say the recognition by our governments of the very important role that we play in DC, again, in the parliament, in Fiji, for example, and of course, in the rest of the Pacific, our governments have acknowledged and given us that support, which is a huge enabler for us to be able to do what we do best. And also, now people have begun to hear us, especially our partners who have time and again try to undermine local actors based on the assumption that they are not qualified enough, that they are not skilled enough. However, they only, I think the biggest mistake that they have always had was to look at a paper qualification, but the traditional knowledge, the knowledge of the area, the demography of the area, it is only locals who know it better, and they are able to navigate during disasters and coordinate better than anybody else. Therefore, it has been realized now to a very high extent in the Pacific that we need to be able to provide that. So that has been a great enabler. Thank you.
Joseph?
Yeah. Can you just repeat your question, Gan?
Come again, please.
Can you repeat your question again?
I said, you raised the point that the disaster was a kind of enabler to show the importance of local actors and how it one or the other push you to organize yourself into a hub. Akmal said the disaster too was an enabler, and you too, you raised the point of being the network that we have put together, the all hubs connecting to each other and sharing experience. And then I was asking for other enablers, and Akmal has added the government. Maybe you have another enabler apart from the three, another enabler that you use to in the process of mounting your hub.
See, I would put another enabler. Probably this perhaps could have happened in some cases, could have not happened in many cases. A significant enabler would be or should be the local agencies realize the context and their potential. If they are able to realize the potential, I think that would change the trends with a lot of accountability and transparency. So it means they shouldn't be dependent on a particular system, and they should try to build in a system with their potential and then project that. So that would be one of the major enablers which I would look at. This has been an experience on certain issues which we have dealt with. Some of our friends have also dealt. You find good cases coming from the field, but these are not coming out. There should be, in other words, if you're talking, it should be well documented and people should realize. It can be a small response, but it's a significant response in the context of in that particular context and in that particular for that particular NGO, which might be a small NGO. So this is something which we'll have to build up. I would rate realization of local NGOs of their potential as one of the significant enablers which should be built up.
If I could sum up, the disaster itself, when it rises, it is an enabler. The networking is an enabler. The government is an enabler. National NGOs, national actors coming up to realize their potential is another enabler. That's great. It means the participants would also feel free. Please feel free to put in your chat what you think may be other enablers to help us and to help ourselves and others in the future. Let's come back to challenges. I was not quite clear when the disasters hit in both India and the Fiji. I was not able to pick up barriers outside international actors, the interaction, maybe outside the government not being that much involved. I did not get a sense of other barriers that you faced and challenges. Can you come back and elaborate more on that, Joseph, please?
The challenges we face in the present situation ultimately relates with funding. So what is the alternate way of funding and how we go about it? We are in an international architecture where if you want to look for funds, you have certain systems which has to be complied. But that sometimes it's a time-consuming process, and then to what extent funding is there, the time span from the disaster time to a response time. So this is a big challenge you find. The case of COVID-19 first wave, resources began to move slowly, but in the case of second wave, it was a very fast way the resource moved, but ultimately the support also mostly went to the government. People are giving it. Perhaps did we look at long-term needs for the community? The community is being affected for the second time. So how that has to be built up, and so how are these kind of things coming up? Because for us, we know people have been affected in the first wave. Second wave, okay, life-saving equipments are important, but at the same time, people have lost their job, livelihood issues are there. So how best the system supports that? Mostly, if you look, we are confined with relief. So how to stretch the relief to rehabilitation? How well can a resource management be planned? How to access local resources? But that is where, the international architecture and the local architectural, local humanitarian architecture should balance and build in a viable alternative to look at these issues. It's not just looking at relief alone. So this is something which we are facing now. In many places, we do find people with livelihood issues. We are also currently trying to understand this dynamic. For us, we had a dynamic shift in the system. We had a shift in the system, which is also a lot of challenging things where big NGOs who used to work with are now directly working. Small NGOs who had a lot of partners now have to look at some other alternate sources, or in certain cases, they may be working as vendors where their recognition is not there. The credibility, the recognition of a small NGO might not be picturized properly. So all these things are there. So at present, we are in a very dicey situation, but I do hope there are opportunities for Start Network to pitch into these gaps and try to build in a viable mechanism.
Good.
Okay.
Good. Akmal, do you have a word to say? I'm not sure.
Yes.
I'm not sure Piango has a funding problem. Do you?
No, we don't have a problem with our membership and working with the locals. However, I can assure you that we have had some challenges, and that I can tell you firsthand. when I was the national CSO coordinator in 2016 after Cyclone Winston had hit Fiji, which was a Category 5 cyclone, and it affected about 47% of Fiji's population. I will tell you this through a personal experience, my friend, and to everybody. The biggest challenge I faced was finance. And while everybody knew that the local NGOs were coming together and were coordinating and were mapping and putting every single thing together to be able to reach out and to provide the support required for the survival of the people of Fiji, there were certain organizations. I mean, what the disparity, the unfairness, I believe in finances, and somebody's got to bring this out, which is, for example, there was, and I brought it out to the Fijian government last year. I said, sometimes these there are 20 or more local NGOs here, but there could be one INGO. And in that room, I said, one NGO with 8 people here, their per diem could be more than collectively the amount of money the 20 people would have seen in 3 months. So can you see the privilege and everything else that the other organizations are basically, there is a sense of entitlement, and locals are seen. So within the sector itself, there is a huge discrimination. There is a class system, whereas we are it and they are low. I'm not afraid to call this out. And which I could say the capitalist of our sector, sometimes, not all of them, and they will still come back to us because they don't dirty their hands. They will still come back to us for data mining, and who will use this data to exploit or to get more benefits at our costs, because locals have not cooperated with them, have not given them the true responses to the questions that they have posed. So basically, the exploitation of the work of the local actors is a huge concern and a challenge that I had faced personally.
Great. You've said so many things in these few words. Like, we could better use the money using local actors. There is a kind of segregation. There's kind of racism. There is kind of classes within actors. Frustration. I get all that. Now, Akmal, I'm back to you. Now, knowing now what you know, should I ask you today to restart mounting the hub? Which kind of advice would you give yourself in one sentence, please? One or two sentences, please.
My advice: local actors determining local agenda. Everything that we do has to be simple, does not have to be complicated, should be in the language of the layman. We do not need a lot of technicality to be able to go and provide the basic need to a group of human beings who are in desperate need of help. In order to be able to do that, we need to simplify the system. I believe the system has been complicated with all these jargons and everything else that we can think of, so that it becomes part of this elite system. We need to bring this elite system to a people-owned system, which humanitarian system was from the beginning. We need to go back to its basis. Thank you.
I can really see your passion presenting this. I can really see your passion. Joseph, I'm not sure you'll be expressing this passion like Akmal. Tell me passionately, which advice would you give yourself should you restart the India hub now? Joseph.
See, I'm in a sense, I'm looking at what Akmal said, but I very much like the terminology he gave. No, Akmal spoke of jargon. He gave a new jargon, data mining. That's what is happening now. You want data for a response. Come on, a guy is suffering, and that is the difference between the local support and an international support. When you're looking at a local support, the people is here. The people who can possibly donate, a philanthropist or a local companies or a corporation are that they don't need a big assessment like that. That's how we'll have to retune our system. All these assessments are needed if something happens in the place where I live in Chennai. Someone from America who doesn't know the system, what is happening here, needs all these details to give the fund. And by the time all these processes go, the emergency the crisis period is out. So how do we look at this? A real-time response, how is it possible? Local actors, local supporters, that is what is something that we would like to see. So we can't be having a system dependent on international resources alone. We should build in a system of local resources also. So that is what we are looking at now, where we are having enough case stories on all these issues of international architectural control over the local system. So that has to be moved at. Yes, once upon a time you came and you did good job. Thank you. If you're really doing good job, you should have built up us and allowed us to be independent. We're looking at life. But on the other side, there could also be another thing. Even if they wouldn't have come, there could have been some other system which would have come. Now it is in a chaos. You have dependent on a certain system, but you also have to look at funding is not available on that system. So how do we relook the thing? So this is something which has to be looked at. So that is where local actors and local linking with local support mechanisms are important. We need to simplify the system. The system should help us in response, not in dealing with the research. So that's my take. The system should help in response, real-time response, and not in leading to research, then discussing that for the next 6 to 9 months, why it came, what happened, a typical lessons learned, make the system more complicated, and then again a research. So this is what is happening. So we'll have to look at that. How, of course, I'm not saying that these assessments are not needed. It might be needed on a long term, but you respond and try to get the impact. That's all.
Thanks both. Unfortunately, Gang's connection dropped out again, so it's
yeah,
me here again,
yeah.
just to ask one of the last few questions. Hopefully he'll join back in. So looking ahead, if you focus back in on your specific hubs, what are the 1 or 2 things that you are planning to tackle or put in place or to resolve over the next year? What are the plans for your hub? Do you want to start, Joseph?
Yeah, one thing which, as I have already told, local agencies should realize the potential. And the whole, in India is a very vast country. Many NGOs, when there are many NGOs also, then you have many type of politics. It is not singled out to one type of politics. You have different type of NGOs. And in today's context, we can't single out an NGO who works in development. We may also be interested. We are talking of mainstreaming DRR in development, so we'll also have to link them. So all this is the best. One of the fundamental thing which we as a hub should be involved in trying to build in a good understanding of localization. This understanding of localization should not be confined with the limited NGO. So that's one of the things which we are going with regional meetings, trying to build it. And it cannot be built that easily. Of course, in certain situations, these are all based on situations we need to talk with people, gradually they could understand. So that is one thing which we are looking at, and this will be clubbed with also innovation. We are looking at the systems change and all innovations is there. And what are the alternate financial mechanisms? One thing we also should look at enhancing the accountability and transparency processes, consortium approach, a coordinated approach. All this has to come, and that only builds in a system. So these are some things, ultimately we are looking at building in a good understanding of localization with innovations, which could lead to an effective system.
Thanks, Joseph. Very inspiring to hear about all those initiatives. So the innovation program that was kind of previewed yesterday. You can check out a learn session from that. And yeah, really, it's been really inspirational to hear about the regional consultations that the India Hub has been running and that kind of very deep subnational engagement there. So Akmal, what are the Pacific Hub plans for 2022? Anything you want to tackle, resolve, address?
Well, I mean, we have just been tackling it. I mean, look, I think for the Pacific Hub, one of the things we want to be able to tackle is to be able to be prepared. Right now, while the rest of the world don't know, the Pacific is really a victim of nuclear colonization. And when I say that, I want to bring about a disaster that is waiting to happen in the Pacific, which is the Runic Dome, known as the Tomb in the Pacific, which is located in Marshall Islands. It is 73,000 square meters cubed, and it is it is a it's a 115 meter in diameter and 46 centimeters in thickness, and it is holding 73,000 meter cubed of radioactive waste. Now, this is what's happening. The dome is damaged and there's water pouring in. If that happens, the entire Pacific will face a humanitarian crisis like never before. This could be in instance of such as cancer, various types of, not being able to access food from the oceans. So these are the kind of things that we in the Pacific have to be prepared, have to be ready. But however, because of climate change, 3 of our island countries have been already labeled as countries that would submerge underwater, which is Kiribati, Marshall Islands, and Tuvalu. That is another disaster waiting to happen just because our bigger brothers and sisters, these countries, are not willing to adhere to the 1.5 degrees. So the Pacific is basically sitting in a hot pot, and we always have to be prepared at all times. Therefore, in the spirit of this preparedness, and as I said, in the humanitarian work, at the end of the day, it is not about me, it is not about Akmal, it's not about anybody else, but it is about the people we serve. And when we think about the best interest of the people that we serve, Tanya, then it's simple. We can put aside our differences and work with everybody. And the Pacific is going to, through Piango, which is hosting the hub, we will embrace and call upon and invite, work, collaborate, and implement the humanitarian work in its true spirit so that we are successfully able to help to serve the people of the Pacific to the best of our abilities. Thank you.
Thanks, Akmal. Yeah, I mean, you definitely highlight the urgency of some of the issues facing the Pacific, and obviously the hub has such a critical role to play there with other actors. So just on that, what can START Network and what can the START Network members do to support you, whether it's doing something or not doing something? Starting with Akmal and then Joseph.
START Network, it's simple. START Network, I think START Network has taken the first step. I think the membership has to now, if truly the network is, or as the outcome of the 2019 assembly that I read, if the members really meant what they said, if they want to walk the talk, then they need to agree to the governance design that has been proposed from the last General Assembly to now. Yesterday, Antigone was in a session with it, and these governance design is basically was something that had representative of the membership through the board, the secretariat, and the hubs, and it was truly worked and debated on and discussed, and this wonderful and beautiful document and transitionary process was suggested. I am therefore urging START Network, if you're really serious about localization, if you really are into empowering, and of course, Piango is now a member of START Network too, if you are into empowering and working the talk, then it is time for us now to embrace the governance design. And of course, nothing is perfect. We need to review, we need to debate, we need to discuss, but the step has to be taken. That needs to be discussed, endorsed, and approved, and implemented. Thank you.
Thanks for that rallying call, Akmal. And so, yeah, a reminder to everyone listening, there's the annual General Assembly in a couple of hours where this governance design will be voted on. So please do attend that, or make sure your assembly rep does attend that. Over to you, Joseph. Kind of final words. What can StartNet Work or StartNet Work members do to better support the hub?
Yeah, one thing which I would urge start members is, as what I would agree with what Akmal said, and the next thing which I would like to know, I would like to push through for that is the start members, their country members or the country representatives or the country people, they should also take that stand. It's not only the international officers taking the stand. How do we bridge the gap between at the global level and at the country level? That's what the governance system is one thing, but when you're looking at the system of the INGO, they have a global office and a country office. So what is the role of the country office and who determines the role? If perhaps there is a person with a passion for localization in the local and the country office, they could steer it. So at the global level, how does START steer this passion amongst the local START members supporting the hub? So that is something which has to emerge. Probably even in this kind of design, other things, I have seen, global actors from START coming, and perhaps you build in responsibility from the country actors also, so that they are also part of the system. And then I would say START could be a good start in terms of localization, the whole mechanism of the revised hub and all. But however, we also try to look at going beyond this, where the local hubs also can't be looking at just having access to START network resources alone. The disasters are bigger now, as frequently it comes. So 4 or 5 disasters, a micro disaster might put a person on. So what type of system are we also looking at? And that might be, we might have to go beyond START also. So how does START building a system gradually? The micro disasters are something which we don't bother. We always think the government can do it, but sometimes, it can be a micro disaster if it occurs 3 or 4 times. How do we deal it? So these are also some technicalities which are involved, and perhaps the expertise is there with START. I have seen START members and I have seen the START secretariat team. I also actively engaged in many of the things. We had hectic discussions going on in the START financing facility, which is START ready. So we do find the capacity. So how does the capacity ultimately reach? All these capacities are pooled and reach to the benefit of the people who are at the forefront of the disasters. When I say the people, it's also the local actors.
Thank you, Joseph. So I'm going to move on to some questions from the audience. Gang, please do jump in if you're back on the line. But until then, there's a question here around the roles of people. So I think it's speaking to the roles of different members within a hub or people in leadership positions. Have you written down what the different roles are? Are there guidelines around it? How do you work together? So Joseph, maybe I can start with you. Joseph, can you hear me?
We have written down certain aspects, the rules of engagement, which is a prelude to the governance system, how it will come. There are certain set formats, but we are not gone in depth into that. We have put in certain write-ups based on what is the role of the hub and how people come in. Perhaps that will be the next step when we try to build in a governance system in the hubs. So that is what we are into. So here what we now have in India is we are having a moderating team and we have task teams. So we feel the members should have members in the hub should be doing some sort of an activity. So, a person, it's also something that we are bringing. If a person has to be in the moderating team, he should be associated with some task teams. It's not just simply coming and sitting them and giving advices. So there is an element of responsibility. This is something, which we did have some challenges on the shared leadership. I didn't share much before about this. When everybody's responsibility becomes no one's responsibility. So there we are trying to pitch in responsibility to certain people. So in that, staff members also are part, and the functioning is, it might not be typically like Start Network member, this, you have to do this. So there are certain informal ways of pitching in the responsibilities and accountability. That we are doing. Gradually, when it goes to the governance mechanism from the rules of engagement which we presently have, there could be some clarity coming on that, and people will understand what would be their role.
Thanks, Joseph. Yeah, I think that issue of collective responsibility and collective leadership is so important across all of the hubs. Maybe Akmal, I can pose a different question to you. Someone's asked, can a non-member of Start Network be an associate or observer member of the hub to support and complement each other?
I think the question here is, and that's not necessary, because the hub, it will become a member of Start Network anyway. So anybody who is a humanitarian actor and you are in the region or in the area of a particular hub, you can definitely become part of the hub. You can definitely go into and register your interest and say, look, I want to be part of this wonderful work that you're doing, or to be able to contribute. Let's fix things together. This is what I've observed. So we are always open to working with everybody.
Fantastic. I love that spirit of openness. Maybe that's a really great point to close the session. We're at time. So just a few things to wrap up. Thank you both so much for your wise insights and thoughts about the sector as well as the hub. Gang, sorry that he wasn't here to finish off the session, but thank you to him as well. Please do make sure that you stay on for future hub sessions during the rest of the assembly. So there's one in a few hours about new hubs, so welcoming new hubs to this wonderful cohort. And then on Thursday, there is a build session on power mapping within the Start Network and within the hub. So we'd really like to encourage you to join then. So yeah, for now, thank you both so much, and thank you all for listening in. Hope to see you in the rest of the assembly. Bye, everyone.